One Piece has told many stories, stories of adventure, stories of love, stories of war, and all of them have great emotional appeal. This is what draws many to the series. For a show to elicit so much emotion is a feat. Yet one particular story, a story that wasn't about a Straw Hat, has the power to cement your love for One Piece's sense of storytelling and sorrow. This was the story of a little girl named Koala, and the story of how she learned to smile. Ironically, this may be the saddest tale that One Piece has ever told. And yet, this is how far I got into the video essay before I started doing my research. I wanted to rewatch the episodes that made up Koala's arc, but when I did, I was astonished, because it wasn't there. Koala's was a story of a girl who was kidnapped by the world government and taken to be a slave of the Celestial Dragons, a group of world noble in the One Piece universe. After she was liberated from her enslavement, we meet her as she tries to come aboard a pirate ship captained by Fisher Tiger, a fisherman and the man that liberated her and countless other slaves, many of whom were fishermen like himself. Once on the ship, the crew takes her safely to her hometown after many years of separation, and that is where the enslavement journey ends for her. Eventually, she does become a member of the Revolutionary Army, so her journey continues, but the truth is we don't see what life was like for her when she was enslaved, or what it was like when she escaped. We don't even see her get captured. No part of those years were brought to screen. But for some reason, in my mind, I thought they had been. I had a really strong emotional reaction to watching Koala's story my first time through the series, on a day that while watching, I was suddenly blinded by tears I didn't think would stop. And apparently so much so that I created a story in my mind of seeing Koala abused by her slavers, some kind of depiction of her capture, and that I somehow told myself that I had only forgotten these episodes. But they really never existed. And only recently did I realize most of what I knew about this story was imagined. It is very possible that I was remembering the past of Boa Hancock and her sisters and how they were enslaved by the Celestial Dragons, which was a part of the One Piece anime, and conflating them. I also saw how they treated Hachi. However, even though those stories came first, I wasn't emotional when I watched them. Only for Koala. So instead of going into detail about what One Piece actually showed, I'll tell you the story of what I made up in my head. The story of the things I knew about Koala that no one ever told me. When Koala first meets the Sun Pirates, she smiles and puts her best foot forward, trying not to be a burden to the crew she was soon to travel with. We quickly learn of her incessant smiling. Koala's incessant smiling made her a target of an attack, but in response to being hit, she quickly got up from the floor and started cleaning her own blood. And all she could say was,
"What are you..."
I'm sorry. I'm a hard worker. I'll clean and I don't need to take a break. So please don't hit me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll give it my best. I'm sorry. I promise that I'll never cry. Just please don't kill me.
While she was enslaved, she wasn't able to frown or show displeasure. It would anger her captors. Reacting to her pain would also cause them to inflict more wounds upon her, so she only smiled. If she can prove herself to be non-threatening, even aloof, perhaps they wouldn't bother her. She endured this treatment for such a long time that it became natural to shrug off pain, to wipe away blood as if it were sweat. And in her mind, without knowing, she even invited the lesser pain to save herself from the greater. That's why when Fisher Tiger covered her slaver's brand with the crest of the Sun Pirates, the pain from being branded again, although causing her to pass out, didn't fill her with rage or revenge. It was a small price for staying alive. Still, it was strange for her, you see. When Jinbei and Fisher Tiger tried to convince her that they wouldn't kill her, that they meant her no harm, she was confused. How could someone that looked so much like her enemy really mean her well? Sure, fishmen look different, but they're still men. They're still bigger, just like her slavers. They still carry guns. They've already caused her pain, just like the others. And there were so many of them against her. Where could she go for safety? Until Fisher Tiger threw his gun into the sea, the same tool that aided her capture, the same one that kept her compliant, the same threat that forced her to believe that she could only smile despite her pain, fear, or sorrow. Just for a moment, she allowed herself to believe that she was safe. And when she did, she finally stopped smiling. It didn't last long, though. The next day she was back to her ways. It was safer this way, in case that glimmer of hope was only an illusion. But eventually they brought her home. Years passed, and she healed. She changed and grew up. So all is well. And furthermore, this wasn't the saddest story in One Piece. Any story in the Straw Hat Crew is probably sadder than what we see of Koala's story. But perhaps it was the saddest story never told. A story that you could know without even knowing. You can see without eyes and hear without ears, for those who can perceive it. Who knows how? But the more you watch Koala's story, the why becomes more clear. Now, as for Koala and the past we don't actually see, I'd like to offer it a little prayer. Modern people cannot admit to knowing much about what it is to be enslaved, but some have known what it is like to be oppressed, or to be a captive of someone. So for all those who fit that description, I hope that one day, in good time, you make it home. And in that bright future, you only have to smile when you're happy.